over this past week, I mean, I think the world was collectively holding their breath to see which way this Iran conflict went as far as escalation. But during that time, the Trump administration did declare war on microplastics. And that is the headline, microplastics in our water. That is a Daily Caller here. And you have HHS Secretary Kennedy went out into the public at a press conference to speak about this. Take a listen.
Right.
A study of 62 placentas. Every single sample contained microplastics, evidence that exposure begins before birth. This is not a rare exposure. This is baseline. We are not dealing with a distant or theoretical risk. We are dealing with a measurable and growing presence inside the human body. And the signal is getting stronger. Animal studies show that microplastic exposure can drive inflammation, cardiovascular damage, impaired cognition, and tumor growth. Human data raises parallel concerns. Diseased tissue consistently shows higher concentrations of microplastics than compared to healthy tissue. In one major clinical study, patients with microplastics detected in arterial plaque faced a 4.5-fold higher risk of heart attack, stroke, or death in less than 3 years. We cannot regulate what we don't understand. So today, HHS, through ARPA-H, Jeffery Jaxen here, alongside EPA, is taking direct action. We are launching STOMP, which stands for Systematic Targeting of Microplastics. It's a $144 million national program to measure, understand, and to remove microplastics from the human body. We are focusing on 3 questions: what is in the body, what's causing the harm, and how do we remove it? And we're answering them in that order.
Really exciting stuff, actually. I mean, this is something I think we're all starting to get very concerned about. Plastic as such, so ubiquitous in everything that we do. I keep trying to, honestly, Jeffrey, travel with the little, stainless steel bottle or something. But then you're going through, I lose it, and, and then I find myself, because I travel so much, going back to a plastic bottle. But, it's great. It was really great to have information on this, because we really have no idea. We're just flying blind here.
Yeah, and that's thanks to the do-nothing agencies and regulatory heads before Kennedy. They did nothing about this. And you hear him, we don't even know how to measure this. We're not measuring it. We don't know what it does in the body. We have studies showing that it's pretty detrimental. You don't want this stuff in your brain. It's showing up in people's brains. That is major. We're moving the ball. And there's a lot of people, myself, yourself included, that have said, well, what about this area? What about this area? Maha's kind of ignoring that. I don't necessarily think that this should take away what they're not doing from what they are doing, because there's so much to get done here. Microplastics, I mean, the Medicaid fraud, and go on and on. There's just so much. So we have to celebrate every win here like this, because these are next generation things. Our kids are going to be dealing with this in a very bad way if we don't even put a stake in the ground at this point.
I agree. I had a way of thinking about that really quickly, Jeffrey. I was doing a podcast the other day talking about exactly this. Just people frustrated. Why haven't they gotten rid of the COVID vaccine or things like that? I think if you're logical, reasonable, looking at the lay of the land, there's obviously difficulties around COVID vaccine, and Trump still celebrates it. Robert Kennedy Jr. has a difficult job. He's trying to get as much done as he can. He's surrounded by bureaucracy. He has a department of tens of thousands of people that may or may not agree with him, or may or may not be working with him. But I likened it to sort of there's a philosophy I use about life that I've been teaching my kids, and it's looking at life sort of like as if you were playing pool, like billiards. I've played with people, like I'm not a great pool player, but over the years, when I sit down, there's people that will have a ball like right next to the pocket, and they'll say, oh, I want to save the easy shot, and they'll go for the difficult one, thinking then I'm just going to leave the easy shot. And I've watched them miss that difficult one, at which giving me an opportunity to come back and win, and it's happened many times. Whereas I say to my kids, don't get too clever, don't get too smart. Hit the shots that you can make. Get those out of the way. Take the easy shots so that you keep moving forward, and you might just find that once you hit one of those shots next to the pocket, that ball rolls up into a position that takes that hard shot and makes it really incredibly easy. But you'll never know if you keep trying to get cute and save your easiest shot for last. And I think that's a good way to look at what Robert Kennedy Jr. is doing. He's obviously up against a lot of difficulties, but let's not put down what are easy shots, because these are the same easy shots that every other HHS secretary has left next to the pocket for decades. Right? We're finally seeing change to chemical dyes in our food, finally looking at microplastics, discussions about fluoride in water, and on and on and on. So it'd be nice to, obviously we want to see those big, difficult shots made. We want to see the 8-ball go down and see this entire issue over with. But there's still a lot left in this game. And I agree, let's celebrate every shot that's being made right now and recognize they've been passed up by everyone before Robert Kennedy Jr.
Right, exactly. Well said. And we try to be forward-looking here, and we try to give people warnings, years in advance if we can, for what we see coming down the road. And this is next story here. This headline, I want to show you this: rising number of Americans refusing life-saving blood transfusions because they came from vaccinated donors. We've had several people on the show warning about this over the years. These are the COVID vaccinated donors, and it comes from this study here, this whole headline: directed donations for unvaccinated blood, a departure from evidence-based medicine associated with clinical harm, resource waste, and oversight gaps. So that's what they're really concerned about in this study, this 2-year study. And it says these requests, again, requests for unvaccinated blood, were associated with clinical deterioration. So think about that. People are willing to have clinical deterioration, in several instances, even shock. People went into shock because they don't want unvaccinated blood. Care delays and resource inefficiencies when standard inventory products were refused. The near absence of documented ethics in transfusion medicine oversight in these cases represents a critical gap. Indeed, it does. And there's another issue going on here, too. At the same time, because we vaccinated an entire population, almost over 95% took the first 2 COVID jabs. Several people, millions of people took those boosters, too. We have the Red Cross coming out in January and saying we have a severe shortage, declared a severe shortage of blood. Blood supply falls 35% in past month. That's major problems. But I blame medicine, I blame the scientific industry, and I blame the government for this. Why? Because they knew this was going to be a problem, and you can't point at anti-vaxxers for this because no one did the science. What science am I talking about? Here's a study from Peter McCullough, from Jessica Rose, and co-authors, and they say this: inadvertent exposure to pharmacologically designed lipid nanoparticles. Remember, those are those little fat globules that carry the spike protein through the body of COVID-vaccinated individuals. They're finding those in body fluids. It says here, biodistribution may not be limited to the body of the product recipient. That means the person that took the shot, as a growing body of evidence demonstrates the possibility of secondary exposure to injection byproducts. As COVID-19 injectable products are associated with an increased risk of stroke, remember, the Biden administration hid that from us. The persistence of product artifacts in the blood presents a possible threat to a recipient of a blood donation from an injected donor who suffered a vaccine-induced thrombosis or thrombocytopenia. That's, again, a stroke in simple terms. Then here's the conclusion. It's a simple conclusion, and this was in 2023 this was asked. We asked the relevant authorities, blood donation clinics and transplant clinics, to consider adding an optional questionnaire for donors on whether they have been vaccinated, the dose schedule, the type of vaccination. This represents a completely non-invasive way to address questions of significant public health importance. Just put a checkbox on there. That's all they have to do. This changes the whole...
or sort of like the vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, Jeffrey. Why don't you test the blood bank? Like they should have done it. They haven't done it. Or if they have, they're not giving us the results. Is there any spike protein found? Like take 1,000 samples. This is the type of thing when we hear that NIH has billions of dollars they spend on research. How about spend it on our blood bank? Is there spike protein in 1,000 different blood samples randomly selected? Is there fatty lipids? And I'm correct, right, Jeffrey, that lipid nanoparticle was actually designed for cancer drugs. The entire purpose was to make it small enough so that it could carry the drug past the blood-brain barrier and get to the brain. That is why that product exists. We've talked about this. So when they used it in the COVID vaccine and told you it would stay in the arm, that's funny because the very delivery system you're using was designed to not stay in the arm, to go to every organ, including our brains. And so, I feel a little responsible, I guess, for this headline because I had a serious health issue. Back in the middle of COVID, I did not realize my blood count had dropped to 4.8 hemoglobin. When 7 is an emergency transfusion, I was supposed to go in ER. It all happened on a Thursday. I missed the show. And of course, as the story went, I flew all the way to Mexico. Luckily, had a donor lend me a plane because I wouldn't have been able to get on a passenger plane at that moment. So I was lucky I had that type of opportunity. But in Mexico, they track whether or not someone was vaccinated. I did not want COVID vaccinated blood. And when I read articles like this by Peter McCullough, I didn't really know. I had no idea we're in the middle of COVID. Who knew? I just didn't want to take the risk. And more studies like this are making me feel like I made the right decision. And now more and more people are making that same decision. I don't want to take the risk. I don't want that stuff in my blood. So it's going to be interesting how we get through what will ultimately be a crisis if more and more people are saying, yeah, I want clean blood too. I guess those of us that didn't get the vaccine, maybe we need to start getting involved in donating blood more often just to save the rest of the world right now as we go through this crisis.
Right. And the blame falls squarely on the Biden administration. And there's a call to action on the current administration. Broadcast this, make it public knowledge of what is in this blood. Do the tests. I don't think it's that hard. I'm not a scientist, but I know scientists that can do this pretty quickly. And here's Japanese scientists. They're finding similar things too. This is a study from 2024. Transfusion of blood products derived from genetic vaccine recipients. Again, that's mRNA. Safety concerns. It says here, I'm not going to go through all of them. There's 6 right here. Spike protein contamination, contamination of amyloid aggregates and microthrombi. That's pre-stroke precursors there formed by the spike proteins. Again, number 4 there, the lipid nanoparticles, pseudo-urinated mRNA. And then you have at the bottom these memory B cells, IgG4. So you're getting components in there that may be changing the immune system of the donors. We don't know, but there's evidence here. So there's a call to action here. It seems like a low-hanging fruit. We can get this done, and there's no need to be fear-based.